Your zombie takeout runs deep.
What do you know of my zombie takeout?
Let us explore it. Together, each man hides a secret zombie takeout. It must be exposed and reckoned with. It must be dragged from the darkness and forced into the light. Share your zombie takeout. Share your zombie takeout with me and gain strength from the sharing.
What's up? Welcome to episode 292 of Zombie Takeout, the B-Movie and Cult Movie Podcast. I'm Uncle John.
And I'm Scotto.
And before we get to this week's movie, we've got some listeners submitted, actually quite a bit. This is from Botto Winter on Twitter, in reference to our discussion of Chuck from Happy Days last week.
The strangest things. But hey, you know.
He said, at Zombie Takeout, more geeky information for your brain. Chuck didn't disappear, he joined the military, then he disappeared.
Oh.
Thank you for the correction, Botto. It's been ages since I've seen a Happy Days episode, and even longer since I've seen a Chuck episode,
Of course.
There was no way I could remember that.
I probably haven't seen a Chuck episode since, like, the 70s, probably.
Well, it's probably been the 80s, at least the early 90s, since I've seen any Happy Days, so.
Yeah.
And on the trailer for this week's movie, John Phillips said, "Oh, this should be a classic ZTO." And then when I'd mentioned that I hadn't watched the movie yet, but I hated it back in 89, 90 when I first saw it, but the plot summary looked interesting. He said, it gets a lot of flack because the loud naysayers hate Shatner, and it's coming off Nimoy directing the previous two. In one of Shatner's Trek memories, he and Nimoy had a deal with Paramount, where what Nimoy gets, Shatner gets, hence he directs Trek 5. As a side note, like Alien 3, the story of the making is much better than the film itself. Ambitious plot, massive special effects required, and the studio slashes the budget. That's Hollywood for you.
I had no idea the making of this was that interesting, actually.
Yeah, I actually was a little lax on my research this week. I didn't really go through the Wikipedia page, but I do have a little bit on Gene Roddenberry hating the original script and some of the special effects issues.
But the rumor has it that Roddenberry's original script for the motion picture was similar to this.
Yeah, apparently. One more bit of listener submitted. Danny Meeks on Google Plus, also on the trailer, said, "This the one where they look for God? Got to be the strangest of all the movies so far. I don't know if it's because of Shatner's directing or what, but it was so meandering and just a big mess. Should have been a throwaway episode of TOS at best, not an entire movie."
But that's what I don't understand about the confusion of the plot. There was an episode of TOS that was very similar to this.
Uh-huh.
I think it was called The Search for Eden. Where somebody, wants to take the ship over. You know what? There were a few episodes in TOS that were very similar to this, where some madman takes over the ship to do something with it.
Maybe it's the part that I had issues with at first, where I thought they actually did meet God when I first saw it for some reason.
Right. That's how, when we were talking about this off air last week, I was kind of like, yeah, no, it's not about that.
Well, yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Just one more thing before we get to this week's movie. I'm going to be appearing on another podcast. I'm going to be a guest on the Geek Questioner podcast. I may have mentioned on the show before, this guy Charlie Hoover on Google Plus posts what he calls the Geek Question of the Day. And the community has sprung up around it that I'm a part of. And he started a podcast interviewing the members of the community, and this week is my turn. So we're recording it Friday. It'll be up on Monday, I think he releases, so I'll be linking to it on all the social networks, when it comes out.
Does this make us geeks?
I have been for a long time, and you are too. I mean...
Yeah, but I was a geek when it meant something,
yeah,
man.
True.
Fuck this bullshit right now.
True, yeah. I think I was a geek before I even knew I was.
Yeah.
I always loved science fiction. I had an on-again, off-again thing with comics since college. I always watched cartoons. I just didn't realize the name for what I was until I got online.
And I don't do figures or anything like that anymore, but
yeah, you've played your share of D&D.
Yeah, I did. It just goes out of my system. It's like, okay, I'm done with that now.
All right, so on to this week's movie, which is, of course, from 1989, Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. Of course, that brings us to the impromptu plot summary, sponsored by Nimbus 3. Whether you're looking for a worthless lump of rock or just a cheap stand-in for Tatooine, look no further than Nimbus 3.
Yeah, just leave your weapons behind.
Mm-hmm.
Also brought to you by McCoy's Beans. Surprisingly good, or you'll insult his ancestors.
Just add bourbon.
The secret ingredient.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, we have shore leave, which is kind of a crazy thing that they would do in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But all these things that they do in the movie are stuff they had done in the series, but the first 4 movies didn't really have anything like this in it.
There was shore leave in the series?
Yes.
I really need to revisit the series.
I mean, there's the one where they go on shore leave, and then there's that flower with the spores that make people, that pretty much the same thing that, Cybok does to people here.
Mm-hmm.
All of this stuff are really elements from the original series in this movie, which is why if you really like the original series, you should like this movie, even though none of it makes any sense whatsoever. It's almost a Rorschach image of things taken from the original series. But yeah, we begin on shore leave. I'm not sure. I'm guessing they decide to go to Yosemite. Really, unless somebody came up with a way, by this time, Yosemite should be a big crater.
Mm-hmm.
But that's another thing.
Yeah.
Something I think about often, actually. I'm kind of on the cusp of where it would affect, the edge of the cloud.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe they didn't quite get that in the late 80s, though, when it was written.
Yeah, they probably didn't know about that. But anyway, but then, while they're on shore leave, they have this planet on Nimbus 3, where it's sort of the planet of peace, where it's kind of in the neutral zone, and all 3 powers are present there.
And it's quite a shithole for being the planet of peace.
Yes. You can tell, well, the 2 of the diplomats that have been there are kind of alcoholics, and are just, people that have just kind of been pushed out of the
wretched hive of scum and villainy sums it up well, I think.
Yes, it is a lot like that. And then they bring this new Romulan in, who's going to be all, this is going to be great.
Who fortunately had 5 lines.
Yes.
In the entire movie.
Right. They were quite pointless, the diplomats, except for the Klingon one in the end.
Well, particularly the Romulan one, because she could not act her way out of a paper bag.
Yeah. And the thing is that they are attacked by some strange, they call them terrorists, but they didn't really do much in the ways of terrorism except take hostages. And they are led by a Vulcan who demands that somebody come in a starship to negotiate, which is your first red flag.
I can't resist. He's out of his Vulcan mind.
He's out of his Vulcan mind. Well, it turns out he is an ancestral Vulcan, which was a concept I had no idea existed until I first saw this movie back in the day, and it was just like, wow, there's another sect of Vulcans who, were just... watching it again, of course, now it's kind of like he may have been the only one, or there may have been
I get that now.
Handful.
I didn't get that during the movie, yeah. He clings to the original Vulcan ways of emotion and passion and all that.
Exactly. So, I mean, that concept alone for this movie was just, whoa. There are, Vulcans with differing opinions that aren't relying on logic. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That could have been explored so much more, too, but, they didn't. They explored it a little bit. So, of course, that starship is none other than the Enterprise, which, as I said, I've forgotten which one, which I think it was in the second one, where every movie they've done with the original crew, the Enterprise is in some state of disrepair,
Yeah, yeah.
um, or they're flying on a Klingon warship bird of
Hmm.
prey.
They did both in this one.
That's true. That's true. They did both. So they go out to the hostage situation, which was of course just a ruse to get the Enterprise to take it over to well to go meet God.
Hmm.
God is of course in behind the Great Barrier
At the center of the galaxy.
at the center of the galaxy, which is very Douglas Adams.
Yeah. Apparently, this is one of those galaxies without a giant black hole in the middle.
So the Great Barrier, which they hype up, and then get through in like what 30 seconds.
Apparently, it was not really that big of a deal to get through the Great Barrier. Poorly named.
It's pretty comical, actually, how long they spend building up of, you can't take this in the Great Barrier, we're all gonna die. And then how, he's comparing it to, the sound barrier, and it goes to great lengths. Time that compared to the amount of time it took them to get through the Great Barrier. Hilarious.
It was just some late show that looked like it was from the mid 80s.
Right. And then, they meet this god, and, he kind of disappoints.
Mm-hmm.
And
then the Klingons who have been chasing them for the entire movie become a plot convenience.
Yeah. They're pretty unnecessary, actually. It was just kind of a pandering, well, we gotta have the Klingons in it. Like, you could have taken them out and the diplomats out and the movie.
It did give them a nice ticking clock throughout the movie.
That was kind of a nice touch of just having like the bird of prey on the radar while all the other actions going on. Like, hey, there's crazy guy out here who destroyed Voyager.
Hilarity ensues, just to
take
care of that formality. Now, the beginning of this movie is notable because it is the only Star Trek movie that starts with an opening scene instead of just going straight to the credits, and has some action behind the credits.
Action behind the credits.
Well, and the initial credits, the lead actors, it's just a starfield. But then when you get to Roddenberry and all the crew, you have the Yosemite scenes.
Ah, right.
But it starts with the scene on Nimbus with Spock and John, is it?
I think so.
His lead follower. And
the guy from Midnight Oil?
Yeah, effectively. I was thinking of the guy from Smoking in the Boys Room video.
Or, yeah, I guess he could be the guy from Cuckoo's Nest, too.
Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a really interesting scene, particularly at the beginning, because it's unusually dramatic for Trek.
Oh, the
one we quoted with the intro.
Yes.
Unusually dramatic for Trek, and it feels very fantasy.
Yeah.
Because you've got this desert planet, and John, as you pointed out, looks like the guy from Midnight Oil, very frail, bald guy.
Yeah.
And Spock comes up on this, was it a horse or was it some other creature he was riding?
I thought it was just a horse, but you might be right. It could have been something made up.
Some kind of mount in this hood, and he looks like the wizard from random fantasy movie.
This is probably the most Star Wars of Star Trek movies.
Yeah. Also, aside from the ears, he doesn't really look Vulcan.
Well, yeah, it's strange, Vulcan with facial hair and all that.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a beard on a Vulcan.
Except for Mirror Mirror.
Okay, yeah, right. The goatee Kirk or Spock.
Spock, yeah. Evil twin Spock.
Mm-hmm, yeah. So they can grow facial hair, they just generally don't.
Yeah.
Which could be part of the ancestral thing, come to think of it.
Yeah.
He's more animalistic. Now, of course, after the credits, we go to Yosemite, and we really get to the problem of the movie. Because, like I said, I liked it, except for any attempt at humor. Every attempt at humor in this movie feels like a sketch from a 70s variety show.
They took the same humor of the fourth one, pretty much. Almost exactly the same humor of the fourth one.
I don't know. I liked the humor in the fourth one. It
But
didn't work in this one.
the road comedy, kind of in space this
Mm-hmm.
time. Or in Yellowstone this time.
Yeah. And I didn't buy Kirk climbing a cliff face for a second.
Well,
Because
and
it's Shatner in the late 80s, so, clearly wearing a piece, clearly, pushing 50, and, heavy set. And he's climbing a cliff face with no rope.
it was Spock that made him actually
Mhm.
fall.
Yeah, Spock distracted him, and he put his hand on a hold that didn't quite work, and he dropped. Incidentally, with regard to the drop, stuntman Kenny Bates is credited with the highest descender fall in the U.S., standing in for Shatner in that scene.
Wait a minute, they really did a stunt on that? They didn't
Yeah.
just green screen that shit?
Someone actually fell.
Wow.
Although, wouldn't he have had a heart attack or at least passed out before he hit the ground?
Well, also, the way he gets grabbed, he gets pulled by, the arm.
Was the leg, actually.
Or his leg. I mean...
Would have dislocated.
Dislocated that with the amount of force.
If not ripped it completely off, yeah.
Yeah.
Although, I complain about the humor, but I did enjoy the scenes with Bones, Kirk, and Spock.
Of course. I think that the one of the main draws of this film is that they actually do try to do some character work for a change.
Yeah.
Which is just, what? We're not just going to go tear around space?
Yeah.
It was very ham-fisted, but they actually did try to do something.
And when did Uhura and Scotty get together?
I think that was first introduced in this.
Okay, well, it wasn't established before this movie.
I'm trying to remember if they kept up with it either, but it's been a little while since I've seen...
Well, we'll find out soon enough.
Undiscovered Country.
I'd like to get through Undiscovered Country and Generations before the end of the year. So,
yeah.
If we can.
Oh, wow. Ambitious.
Well, I mean, this whole thing started last year. I'd like to at least finish it in 2.
It's a lot of movies, though.
Yeah. But the point is, we'll find out soon enough if they continue that through. And then we go back to Tatooine, too. Bastard Tatooine.
It was pretty Tatooine. It was, the farming empty holes.
Yeah. And a bar that is the Mos Eisley Cantina. Plain and simple.
Yes, definitely. And skipping ahead a little bit, when they do come in to fight in the bar, the stripper cat.
Yeah.
When they're fighting them, take a real close listen to the sounds the cat is making when they're fighting.
I have that in my notes, but I missed it at the time. James Brown.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did not even see this online. I just heard it for the first time listening to it last night. I recognize the James Brown songs that they're taking those sound bites from.
Oh, I'm gonna have to go back and check that out. I did get a kick out of every time Kirk said he knows he's gonna die alone. Just because now we know he didn't die alone.
Well, of course.
He died, if I recall correctly, because it's been a while, on stage in front of a large number of people. Delivering a speech.
The what?
Delivering a speech.
Now I'm thinking in Generations.
Yeah, he was delivering a speech when he was killed, right?
No, they were fighting Malcolm McDowell.
Oh, okay. I thought he was... Okay, I have to say it again. I thought I remembered it different. I remember it differently than it happened, apparently.
And his last words were, "It was fun."
Yeah.
Oh my.
Okay, I thought he had been delivering a speech and there were a bunch of people around.
Made no sense.
Yeah.
But sure, only this movie didn't make sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And apparently the town where the bastard Mos Eisley is on Nimbus 3 is called Paradise City. This movie was released 2 years after Appetite for Destruction.
Probably about a year after that was a hit.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it was named after the GNR song.
I think it definitely was, but the question is why? Why would you name it that?
I have no idea, but I can't think of where else they would get that.
It doesn't seem like their type of music.
No. Now, in addition to directing, Shatner also developed the initial storyline in which Spock searches for God, but instead finds an alien being. Series creator Gene Roddenberry disliked the original script, while Nimoy and DeForest Kelley objected to the premise that their characters Spock and McCoy would betray Kirk. The script went through multiple revisions to please the cast and studio, including cuts to the effects-laden climax of the film. Despite a Writers Guild strike cutting into the pre-production, Paramount commenced filming in October of '88. So they started filming in '88. Maybe they were writing it before the song came out. Maybe it was just happenstance.
You might be right. I think so. I think it's just... So, I mean, yeah, this got sabotaged by everybody, it sounds like.
Also, Takai didn't want to do the film initially because he didn't want to be directed by Shatner, but Shatner managed to talk him into it.
Which is odd. I mean, a lot of this, they don't give much to the original cast outside of the three.
Yeah, it's mostly Kirk, Spock, and Bones.
Yeah, they kind of did this, I guess, starting in... I think they gave them enough in Voyage Home, but from here on out, it is just like a couple lines each in the movies, and then they're done.
Although one thing they gave to a particular crew member was probably the most cringeworthy thing I have ever seen on film.
What?
The fan dance. So they're trying to break into Paradise City, which has been taken over by Cybox gang. And in order to distract the lookouts, Uhura does a fan dance.
Yes. It makes no sense.
I just know. Why? I think any brains it loses are going to be the result of that scene.
Well, here's my actual problem with the film, because, I mean, it's not that I like... not that I think any of that's good, of course. But I think it's just so train wreck enjoyable.
Yeah, okay, I can see that.
You know what? I didn't have a problem with the effects originally, but I saw this for the first time last night on an HD television.
Oh, okay.
And it felt like I was watching an old episode of Doctor Who. I mean, it was really bad.
I can see that, yeah.
Like I said, I saw this in the theaters originally. I've seen this on a regular television, I don't know how many times. But yeah, last night was the first time I saw in HD. All of those scenes with shuttlecraft are horrible.
Looks like a toy.
Oh yeah. It looked like an SNL skit.
Now, I'm complaining about, the humor and the fan dance, but I think once they got onto the ship and Kirk, Spock, and Bones managed to get out of the brig, it got a lot better.
I like the scene in the brig.
The scene in the brig itself was okay. The scene with the jet boots, a little bit,
The whole, S? T?
Yeah.
But, I think my favorite scene of all, or sight gag, that it doesn't even get acknowledged, is during the raid to get the diplomats free in Paradise City, where Spock neck pinches a horse.
I completely missed that.
Holy shit. All I'm thinking of is Spock Mongo like candy.
Yes.
I don't think I noticed it until seeing it last night, actually. But Spock neck pinches a fucking horse.
Wow.
The guy on the horse is, attacking. He just reaches over, above the horse's leg, or by the horse's neck, and just falls over.
Oh, man. Now, like I said, it gets a lot better once they get onto the ship and get moving. And Lawrence Luckinbill, who played Cyborg, really hit it out of the park. I loved his performance.
he's very, very arch, but I think the real appeal of this movie is kind of the twist. I mean, because it's about
Hmm.
believers and deceivers at the same time.
Yeah, yeah.
And you have somebody, he's true believer, but he's pulling this deception to get the
Right.
starship and to
Hmm.
get his means to an end, but he really believes in this thing.
Yeah.
And in the end he's following someone who is just, yeah, I mean, there's probably an interesting backstory with how this thing is imprisoned in this great barrier.
Hmm. Oh, yeah, yeah. According to Shatner, the film's main plot themes and elements were inspired by the televangelist movement of the late 80s.
I could see that, definitely. It's, it's probably the most effective storytelling
Yeah.
to convey that.
Hmm.
Usually those are just so over the top
Yeah.
in a different direction
Right.
about what they're trying to say, whereas so much else was over the top of this. That element of the story was actually subtle.
Well, yeah, and I actually really liked the philosophical aspects of it. Not just the religious stuff, but also when Cybok offers to take Kirk's pain, and he says his pain is what makes him who he is.
Yeah,
Okay, so they break through the barrier and they find this creature who calls itself God.
right.
This entity, it's the face of an old bearded white guy in the sky, because that's what they expect.
Right, he can take any form he
Yeah,
wants.
and he appears as the gods from various cultures and various planets. And Cybok turns into a little boy trying to impress a parent the minute he talks to God.
I think if they ever do remake these or reboot or whatever, uh, a version of this movie with just Cybok in the beginning
Hmm.
would probably be fantastic.
Oh yeah.
If Cybok's going about his business and somehow gets I guess, the psychic energy of this being calling out to him and convincing him, because that's what happened here,
Mhm. Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
He has that psychic bond with people,
Hmm.
and this being somehow
Exploited it and called
tapped
to him
into it and
and
exploited
pulled
it
him
to him.
into the core. Yeah. Incidentally, Shatner's cut actually runs slightly over 2 hours,
Wow.
and he's asked Paramount to put it out on DVD. They've refused.
Why?
I don't know.
Why does Paramount think that, oh, let's just keep the Star Trek thing under glass?
Hmm. But I would love to see a fan edit where they just cut out all of the crew stuff at the beginning. Don't even show anything about the Enterprise until they get the call.
I mean, a version of this which would be odd, would be just to have them coming into it. Yeah, just them arriving at Nimbus
Oh,
3.
don't even show them getting the call. Just when they
Yeah,
get to Nimbus 3.
like they're the ones called. Because, I mean, not much really happens if you think about it
Hmm.
until they get to
Right.
Nimbus 3.
Yeah.
Everything else is just, this is what the crew is doing.
Hmm.
Yeah, they're just hanging out.
And please cut the fan dance.
It doesn't, wait, think about this. You're trying. Okay, we need some form of distraction.
Hmm.
Should we set something on fire? Should we do this? Oh, I know. Uhura, take off your clothes and
Yeah.
this is dance.
And Star Trek has always been known for being, inclusive and progressive in that sense. And somehow they just set all of that back, at least in terms of feminism, significantly.
The original series
Yes,
was
the original
not
series.
was not that progressive.
Well, I think ethnically
Not
they were.
not in the terms of feminism,
Well,
though.
no, that's true. That's true. Well,
There,
they did have a
there's.
woman on the bridge.
I mean, the original series, his original concept was to have a woman as first officer, as number one for
Okay.
Pike,
Mhm.
that for that original pilot. But
The
if
studio
you
shut
look,
it down.
well, they shot the whole thing down because they thought it was the original pilot was too cerebral.
Oh yeah,
As
I think
how it
I've
always
seen
went.
that one.
Yeah, but Pike, just not being the alpha that Kirk was that's what they wanted.
Hmm.
But no, the women, the characters that they've had as women were either just
This is true. You're right.
yeah, her was it was great that she was there, but
Mhm.
she was almost a secretary.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much. Yeah, yeah.
And maybe it's because they felt that they couldn't be accepted in the role of a commander.
They couldn't push it too far.
Yeah. But yeah, Pike did call his officer number one. In fact, I think that might have been Majel Barrett.
Okay.
I can't remember
It's
now.
been way too long since I've seen that pilot. I know I've seen it, but the only Pike I can remember was a head on top of a box, which is a later episode, I think.
That's how
brought him
they.
back.
That's how they reused the footage of the pilot.
Okay.
Was when they brought like some. I don't think they actually had the actor, so they had this thing that looked like him, kind of.
Of course, when they get to Shakari, which is the planet behind the Great Barrier, where this alien impersonating God lives, it looks, well, it's clearly the U.S. Southwest.
Yes.
Like, it looks like a postcard of the Southwest.
Which, I mean, if they weren't just at Yosemite, which I know is Northwest,
yeah.
But, I mean, if they weren't just on Earth, and then they go to this other planet that looks like Earth,
it probably wouldn't have stuck out so much.
Yeah. They needed to do some shit with the filter, maybe, to make it a different color.
Well, they were trying to make it look kind of pinkish purple, at least the sky.
Yeah, but they had scenes where it still was pretty much, this is,
And the rock formations were just too classically Southwest.
Right.
I did love Kirk's skepticism in that scene. I mean, he has the iconic line, "What does God want with a starship?" And he's just not buying it for a second. And I think they established that Kirk is at least an agnostic, if not an atheist.
Well, he's skeptical from the beginning.
Well, he's skeptical that this creature is God, yes.
He's skeptical even before, with what Cybok is talking about. Yeah. He's skeptical all the way through. And it is such a twist at the end that it's the skeptic that wins out overall.
And at the end, in the scene that clearly establishes that no, that wasn't God, that I completely overlooked, Bones says, "Do you think God's out there somewhere?" And Kirk says, "I think he's in here," and gestures to the heart.
Oh, yeah.
Kirk is a non-believer. And I just looked it up before we started recording, and Shatner is an atheist.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, he would give Kirk...
Yeah, I think that obviously came from him. I do think that the ending felt kind of rushed. Obviously, they cut quite a bit out because of the effects budget.
Well, I think the most glaring omission in the ending is when Cybok gets killed. They, make no effort to go back. They make no effort to see if he's still there, if they can save him or not.
Yeah.
It's just, he goes, and it's like, all right, let's get out of here, guys. Wait, what?
Well, he kind of walked towards this entity, this creature, and then they sent photon torpedoes straight for the creature.
You let this motherfucker take over the Enterprise, though. You couldn't shoot him because you felt the bond to him. But it's like...
Yeah, then they just literally shoot photon torpedoes at him.
Oh, fuck him. He's dead. Yeah. Let's get out of here. Filler time, guys. Time to go.
Oh, this is the only film appearance of Starfleet Marines. I should say on-screen appearance of Starfleet Marines. When they were landing on Nimbus 3, the guys checking the guns and all, they were Starfleet Marines.
Wow. I mean, they kind of did that in Enterprise.
Okay.
They introduced that concept.
Okay, first confirmed. I'm sorry. First confirmed appearance, not only, is in my notes.
Well, I mean, of course, Enterprise was way after this.
Yeah.
So they're the backstory to, the Marines.
Mm-hmm. Also, there's this little capper scene at the end back at the bar on Nimbus 3, and it is confirmed that Sulu was straight. Because him and Chekhov walk in behind this woman, and they're clearly checking her out. More obviously than I did back in my 20s.
Well, Takei has, gone on record. I've yet to see the latest Star Trek. But Takei has said that, Sulu is not gay.
Yeah, and I had always argued that he could have been because it was never established. This establishes it.
I still think he was.
I mean,
I know
there are
Takei's
moments in previous movies that suggest it. And as I have pointed out, I think it's in 2 or 3. I think it's in 3. There was a scene that really kind of looked like it.
Well, there's a scene he was definitely flirting with that helicopter pilot.
Yeah, there's that too in the last one. Yeah,
and
but
you know,
was that just George Takei coming through the character?
Exactly. That's what I wanted to post on Takei's page when he put that, and I just never had a chance to. But does he really think he was that great?
He has put in some great performances, actually.
Okay.
He was in a Twilight Zone episode as a Japanese soldier. Actually, as a guy who gets basically possessed by a Japanese soldier. Brilliant performance.
I don't know if I've seen this.
What
the fuck, really?
And he was also on Heroes, which for the first season was good, and he was brilliant on it. So Takei is a great actor. It's just his performance as Sulu was a little hit or miss.
I was gonna say, in these though.
Yeah, his performance as Sulu has been a little hit or miss, and he's done some great work as Sulu in the series. He was brilliant in Mirror Mirror.
Whoop 9. When the cat's away.
I mean, he was arch, but he had to be arch. That's the character.
I love all the Mirror episodes.
Oh, also, this was released straight to video in many foreign locations because of its poor box office.
That's
Star
odd.
Trek movie that went straight to video.
Because box office-wise, this was still double of what they put into it.
Oh,
because they had put so little into it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it only cost like $27 million, which if you think about late '80s movies, that's a pretty cheap amount of money.
Yeah.
And it really shows that they cut special effects in this one.
Yeah. When the only real effect we get is the mid '80s light show and God's eye beams. On to sequels and remakes.
The fact that God, or not, we keep calling him God, the
entity,
the pretender.
Yes.
I can use many faces, and then uses Cybok's face.
Mm-hmm.
The greatest way of saying I was using you, motherfucker.
Yeah, pretty much.
But yeah, on to sequels and remakes.
Well,
we've already talked about it.
Second verse, same as the first. There are 2 more with the original cast. Generations, of course, bridges the gap between this and Next Gen. Were there only 3 Next Gen movies?
Well, yeah, Generations.
Well, 4 counting Generations.
Generations.
First Contact.
First Contact and Insurrection.
Insurrection and Nemesis.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Nemesis.
I think a lot of people forget Nemesis.
Sure.
And then, of course, now 3 with, well, I was going to say Abrams, but 2 Abrams and 1 Justin Lin.
Well, it's kind of an Abrams designed universe.
Well, he set it up. I think he produces it.
Yeah.
On to Brains.
On to Brains.
The humor was cringeworthy. The fan dance was even worse. But I really love the philosophical stuff. And once they got underway, I really enjoyed it. I'm going 4.
This is, if you're a fan of the original series, you really should have seen this by now.
Yeah.
If not, I mean, you were talking about the scene on the part when they were on the ship on the way. A lot of that, of course, was this bizarre look at, McCoy's past and a little bit of Spock's past. And somehow, of course, Cybok had the ability to project the images around them, which was really strange and never explained exactly.
Well, I think it was just a psychic ability. He made them see it.
He made them all see. Wow, he has the ability to. I hadn't thought of that.
Kind of a Professor X thing. He can put images into their head and convince them they're seeing whatever he wants.
Oddly enough, this one would make a better stage play than the movie. If you just don't go with the Yeah, but I'm going 4 as well
All right.
because it's just if you want to see a train wreck in space, a train wreck to the stars.
It's not just train wreck; it's half train wreck and half really good movie,
You
and it's
know,
just this weird combination of the two.
it is the shame of it because they do have at the core of this, they do have a great movie, but instead it's turned into this weird, you know,
Mhm.
road movie, you
Yeah.
know.
All right. So what have we learned?
We learned that Mrs. Scotto really did not like the person that did the hair design on this movie.
Okay.
She'd fallen asleep, so I said, you know what, I'm just gonna start it up here, and watch it. Wakes up and like, why does she have like this pokey thing? The Klingon woman had like the cone hair. And
Oh
then they
God.
go back to the ambassador, the Romulan ambassador, and she had the same thing too. And it was just like, did they just have one person doing hair? And it's like, you fuck it, you're gonna get a hair cone.
It was the late 80s. Probably why the hair didn't stick out to me. I remember the late 80s.
That was Paradise City.
And I learned that life is not a dream.
Go to sleep, Spock.
All right, so until next week when we'll be reviewing Real Genius. Been looking forward to this one. It's been a while. I remember really liking it. Hopefully it's not a reverse of this one. I don't think it could be. Until then, go to zombietakeout.com, check out the album art, the episode description, of course the episode itself, which you're already listening to. Links to find us on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, and YouTube. Links to subscribe via RSS and iTunes. Please leave us a rating and a review on iTunes. We'd really appreciate it. Also, if you enjoy the show, spread the word. Give us a little word of mouth. Of course, we appreciate all of the listeners we have, but more would be better.
Oh, should we actually let them know that they should stick around?
Oh, we haven't mentioned that. Yes. We'll be discussing Stranger Things in the outtake. We were going to talk about it in the news section, but the edit's going to be a lot easier if it's in the outtake.
Yeah.
You also find the movie list, every movie we've reviewed so far, and every movie we're going to review, up through 305, I'm going to say. In just a few more weeks, we'll be announcing episode 300. You also find the request form. If you've got a movie you'd like to hear us review, please leave it on the request form and the recommendations list. I had no idea this was going to make the rec list go.
Me neither.
I mean, it's infamously bad.
I was pretty borderline on putting it on the rec list too.
John Phillips said that this was going to be a classic ZTO, and I think he meant that we were going to rip the shit out of it. Turns out it's a classic ZTO in that we both like a movie that nobody else does.
This is the weird case where we rip the shit out of it and still recommend it.
Yeah, actually, it's a good point, yeah. It's kind of both.
But it's a lovable movie.
Yeah. You can email us zombietakeout@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail at 414-368-ZTO1 or for the alphanumerical challenged.
You can colorful simile yourself.
414-368-9861. Of course, always remember that you will always be calling from the middle of Milwaukee. And until next time, always remember, never forget, wherever you go in life, there you are.
There you are.
I could use a shower.
Yes.
So we both have seen Stranger Things, as everybody at this point, I think.
I think so.
Yeah. Overall, I liked it, but as I've been saying on social media, my only real issue is that it was exactly what I was expecting. It is pure homage.
It is a nostalgia piece, of course.
Exactly what I expected seeing the trailer is what I got. I mean, and I guess that could be a benefit in a sense, but I was hoping for at least a little bit of surprise. It's incredibly well made. I'll give it that.
I mean, that is the deal with it. It's well acted, surprisingly well acted. Like, this has no business being as well acted as it is.
Yeah. Winona Ryder really surprised me. I didn't think she could pull that off. She's a bit melodramatic, but she nails it.
I mean, she's the hysterical mom, but given the situation,
it
you
makes
can
sense.
see it. Right. It'd be kind of weird if she wasn't.
Right, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The kids did a brilliant job, surprisingly. Some of the best kid actors I've seen.
That's what shocks everybody about this.
Yeah.
Oh, it's got a bunch of kids in it. Oh, this is going to really suck. They're going to be all precocious and,
And they really do most of the heavy lifting.
Right.
I mean, it's really about the kids more than the adults.
In some ways. Well, I mean, of course, and I've said this on social media myself, it's really about the party.
Yeah, you had a great analogy that really has me rethinking it. It really shows what it's like what it feels like to play D&D.
Well, this is the first film I've really seen that got it. You know, so many times when they're like, people are playing Dungeons and Dragons, they're cosplayers, they're LARPing, whatever.
Right.
But it is just around the table. There was a board though, which is kind of weird, but
Well, there's usually a map of some sort.
Yeah, you can do that, but I mean, if you play long enough,
well, maybe not usually, but frequently, players like to use maps.
It's a little too tiring to do just like the map on the board. It's like there's somebody mapping to get their way out of the dungeon, but yeah, it's guys around a table. There's one motherfucker that rolls the die and can't quite keep it on the table, and you're just like, oh my god, this is gonna go on forever.
And the reason that made me rethink the series is that's kind of what the rest of the series is about too.
Right, they transform that to real life. I mean, they're in Dungeons and Dragons, of course. There is the dungeon master, the storyteller, to keep the story going. But they move it to the real world, where the party is, you could say the kids are sort of like the halflings or hobbits,
right? Yeah.
The high schoolers are kind of, I don't know if you could say they're elves, but they're more of the dexterous,
He was more of an Aragorn type, I think. The older brother.
Yeah, something like that. And
really, if you want to go straight to Lord of the Rings, they were Aragorn and Arwen.
Okay. And then the adults.
The adults are kind of the elves. Because they're the ones who spend all the time arguing.
True. So you're saying that Gandalf was the sheriff?
We didn't really have a Gandalf, which I think is one of the things I liked about it. It wasn't a hero's journey. At least not in all of the cliches.
No, it definitely was not a hero's journey.
We didn't have an old wizard.
No. No, there wasn't a threshold. Well, I guess you could almost say if it was anybody's hero's journey, it was the kid that got kidnapped.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
He's in the belly of the whale, and and if I transformed.
If I was going to analogize Hopper to anybody, that's Hopper, right?
Yes.
Hooper. The sheriff.
Because I keep thinking they named him after Dennis Hopper, but they didn't. It was some other character.
He's kind of Elrond.
Okay.
He's kind of trying to negotiate all sides. And he kind of, well, we know where he ends up. Let's just go full spoilers on this, because everybody's seen it by now.
That's true, and this is just an extra, and if you haven't seen it, you can
you can just choose not to listen to this. Is Elle dead?
I would say not.
I thought she was until he leaves the waffles in the box at the end.
Right. I mean, no body, no death.
But she kind of blew up.
The same principle with Cybok and
yeah. That's true. I would love to see him come back in the new series.
Oh, she was the wizard, of course.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
And she was sort of like...
right.
She was the non-playing character.
Apologies if I just hit my desk and not blow everybody's ears out. You're right, she was the old wizard that she left.
You should say dagnabbit if you're going to hit your desk like that.
She left them, and that caused them to have to step up and do what they had to do. Right. Elle was the old wizard.
I mean, because I think the dungeon master was Matthew Modine.
Well, if they're really living it, they don't really need a dungeon master.
Well, he's created all of these things,
Well, he was more
and
Sauron. He
he's
was the big bad.
he's created that whatever creature that was with
Well, he didn't create it. He brought it to this reality.
Okay, true.
He accidentally opened the portal that allowed it.
If I were attacked by a monster that looked like that, I would kind of giggle because its face, resembled a vagina.
A little bit, maybe.
A little bit?
Well, okay. Take the predator and make that the predator's mouth the entire face. And that's the monster.
I would have been killed so quickly because I'd been like, what's up, vagina head?
It took me a while to kind of wrap my head around it because you kind of only see the open mouth at times. You never get a good look at the face with the mouth closed until later. One thing I thought was odd was the cult of Barb, as I'm calling it. A lot of people love Barb, and she's like the Wedge of Stranger Things.
that is very strange.
She's in like 2 episodes.
But she is the ultimate.
She did less than Wedge actually did, and people criticize the cult of Wedge.
She's the ultimate 80s girl, though. I mean, the way she's dressed, they went all in for her costume.
Mm-hmm.
Wedge didn't really do that much either.
He survived all 3 battles.
That's true.
I mean, at least he's got something under his belt. Barb was in 2 episodes and was killed.
Well, Wedge has the entire X-Wing series.
Yeah, that too.
Barb did more than Boba Fett, and he has a cult.
That's a very good point. You're right there.
He's more good to me.
Yeah.
He's so good to be dead.
Uh-huh. If there should be a favorite unlikely character, it's Dustin.
Oh, of course. He's absolutely fantastic.
The actor was brilliant. And I don't think that he's done much before this.
I think he was a stage actor.
Oh, okay, that explains it.
In fact, I think all those kids are stage actors.
All right.
Like Dustin did like a stint in Les Mis on Broadway.
Oh, okay. That's why they're so good.
Well, usually you would think if I just heard a show talking about this. I think it was yesterday, where it wouldn't have been good if they got precocious stage acting kids. And I'm like, but they are stage acting kids, dude. But they're good stage acting kids.
Mm-hmm. And it's not just the actor who was brilliant, but the character. Dustin is kind of the one who just basically slaps everybody upside the head when they're, fighting amongst themselves and keeps everything moving.
He keeps the party together.
Yeah.
I mean, they use... You think they're just being dumb kids talking about Dungeons and Dragons and applying it to real life, but that's exactly what's going on here. And he's talking about the party needing, the structure to survive.
And he's kind of the rationalist. He's the one who is kind of he's the sane one of the group. When, Mike is way too trusting of Elle, and who's the third one? I can't think of the character's name.
Was it Will?
Will was the one who was taken. Well,
oh, damn it.
But
usually I have IMDb up so I remember all the character names.
The remaining one, whose name I can't recall, he was too suspicious, and and Mike was too trusting, and Dustin was kind of the one in the middle, basically saying, she's got the superpowers, we need her.
Lucas.
Yeah. Dustin was the one who basically said, she's got superpowers, we don't, we kind of need her.
Which is why I thought they were all 70s actors. Hopper, Lucas, Dustin.
Mm-hmm. Probably the sources of the names.
I forgot, they were talking about different characters that they took from different other sci-fi movies. Yeah,
there's a great side-by-side montage of scenes from Stranger Things and scenes from, classic late 70s, early 80s movies that they ripped off in Stranger Things. Aside from the predictability, though, my only real complaints, I didn't buy Modine as a villain. He just didn't seem right for the part. Maybe it's just because of the roles I associate him with.
I think he does a creep really well, though.
He was... I just didn't buy it. As we were talking about off air last week, Rutger Hauer or, of course, Christopher Walken would have been way better.
Who isn't better with Christopher
Well,
Walken?
yeah, I don't know if they could have afforded Walken, but they could have
Right.
afforded Rucker Hauer, and he's got the '80s pedigree. I think it would have been a nice touch.
I think if they get Rucker Hauer, he should have just been the hobo with the shotgun and sent him into the parallel universe.
Uh-huh.
Or into the upside down, as
Yeah.
they call it here.
Only other issue I had was some minor problems with the CG. When they sent the guy through on the tether, some of it just looked like Babylon 5 bad. And I know I was talking about Babylon 5 last week, but the CGI was horrible. Even for the time.
It looked better than the movie we just saw.
Well, that's true, but it was made in 2016 or 2015, not 1989.
I thought this was made in 83.
Yeah. So overall, I mean, if you haven't seen it, if you're one of the few, watch the trailer. If that appeals to you, that's what you'll get.
If you haven't seen it, we're sorry.
Well, it's probably been spoiled for you by now, way before we got to it.
No, I definitely see it. It's
Yeah. If nothing else, it's very well made and it's a great ride.
definitely.
All right, so talk to you next week.
Later.